They left at dawn as agreed. This uneasy alliance of four pushed north, abandoning the compromised camp. A steady pace was crucial, but the suspicion that simmered between them was like a heavy weight, slowing their every step. They had been walking for several hours, crossing a bare, windswept hillside, when the very air began to change. In the taiga, the enemy isn't just the wildlife with claws and teeth. Sometimes the enemy is the sky itself. Caleb was the first to stop. He licked his index finger and held it up to the air, a gesture as old as humanity. The wind had shifted. It no longer just bit at their exposed skin. It carried a razor-sharp chill that promised something far worse. "Alex!" Caleb called out, his voice sharp with urgency. Alex had noticed it too. He was staring at the horizon. The western sky was no longer a pale, indifferent grey. It had turned a heavy, leaden colour, like bruised metal. The clouds weren't just gathering, they were racing towards them with an alarming, unnatural speed. "The pressure is dropping," Alex said, his voice low and serious. "We don't have much time. A blizzard is about to hit." Brenda's eyes darted around the desolate landscape. There was nothing, just stark black pines and an endless sea of white snow. "We have to find a cave," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "No time," Caleb interrupted, his eyes scanning the terrain with an intensity that bordered on feral. "We have to take shelter immediately." He pointed to a low-lying, sheltered area where the snow had drifted and piled deep against a small rise. "We build here, right now." They couldn't dig a traditional snow cave. The slope wasn't steep or deep enough with compacted snow. Alex, with his practical technical knowledge, proposed the only viable solution, a Quinzhee. "We don't dig in," he explained, his words clipped and fast. "We create our own hill of snow first." The work began with a frantic, desperate urgency. This was it. The first real test of their fragile alliance. Survival demanded they move tons of snow using only the most rudimentary tools. Caleb and Alex, the two strongest, took the axe and a makeshift shovel they had fashioned from a piece of metal. They hacked and broke up the hard outer crust of the snow, shoveling the lighter powder into a central pile. Diana and Brenda, though already exhausted from the morning's trek, used their gloved hands and scavenged pieces of bark to scoop and pile the snow, compacting it layer by painstaking layer. It was brutal, back-breaking labor. Within minutes, sweat began to pour down their foreheads, a dangerous thing in this deep cold. "Don't stop!" Caleb yelled, his voice a harsh bark as he saw Brenda pause to catch her breath. "Sweat is the enemy. If we stop now, it will freeze on us." His words weren't cruel. They were a lifeline. They worked like a well-oiled machine, their individual suspicions and resentments dissolving in the face of a singular, all-consuming goal: build or die. In just over an hour, they had created a massive, towering pile of snow well over their heads. "All right," Alex panted, leaning on his shovel for a moment. He pulled out a bundle of small sticks he had prepared earlier. Now for the technical part. He began to methodically stick the small sticks, each about a foot long, all over the surface of the snow dome, spacing them evenly. "These are our depth gauges," he explained to Brenda, who was watching with a mix of curiosity and exhaustion. "When we dig out the chamber from the inside, we stop when we hit the end of a stick. It ensures the walls are an even thickness, strong enough not to collapse, thick enough to insulate." And now came the hardest, most agonizing part: waiting. "The snow needs to sinter," Alex said, his breath pluming in the frigid air. "The individual snow crystals need time to bond together, to fuse into a solid, stable mass. We have to wait at least 90 minutes. Those 90 minutes were torture." As they waited, the wind began to pick up, rising from a moan to a shriek. The four of them huddled together behind the mound they had just built, a meager windbreak against the growing storm. They pressed close, trying to share and conserve what little body heat they had. The temperature was plummeting. It had already dropped at least 10 degrees since they'd started. When the 90 minutes were finally over, the storm was no longer approaching. It was on top of them. The wind howled like a wounded wolf, ripping and tearing at the landscape. "I'll dig the entrance," Alex volunteered. He still had the most stamina, and you could see the need in his eyes to prove his worth, to contribute something more than just knowledge. The entrance had to be dug at the lowest point of the structure to create a cold air trap, before tunneling upward to carve out the sleeping platform above it. Alex crawled into the narrow, newly dug tunnel, using his hands and a flat piece of wood to scrape and push the now sintered snow out behind him. The space was tight, suffocating. He worked at a frantic pace, loose snow falling on his back and neck. He tried to push a large, compacted block of snow that had fused solid. It wouldn't budge. "Come on," he grunted, putting his entire body weight and the full force of his shoulder into the stubborn block. A dry, sickening pop echoed in the confined space. It wasn't the sound of ice. It was the sound of his own body breaking. Alex screamed, a sharp cry of pure pain, and recoiled backward out of the tunnel, clutching his right shoulder. His face was a mask of white agony. "My shoulder," he ground out through clenched teeth. "The old injury, it tore again." Disaster. A serious, debilitating injury, just as the full force of the blizzard hit. Diana reacted instantly. There was no hesitation. "Caleb, keep digging," she ordered, her voice cutting through the rising panic. She pulled Alex aside, quickly tearing a clean strip of cloth from the lining of her spare jacket. She worked with a frightening, almost medical focus, fashioning a crude but effective sling, strapping Alex's arm tightly to his chest to immobilize it. "You are done," she said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "No more digging, keep moving your fingers, don't let them freeze. We need you for the night watch." Caleb, realizing the burden of their survival now rested squarely on his shoulders, didn't waste a second. He plunged into the tunnel Alex had started. He dug with a primal, almost animalistic strength, clawing the snow out with his bare hands, ignoring his broken fingernails and scraped raw skin. He wasn't just digging a shelter anymore. He was digging for all 4 of their lives. Finally, after 15 of the most tense and desperate minutes of their lives, his voice came muffled from within the mound. "It's clear." The main chamber was hollowed out. Outside, the blizzard had descended into pure chaos. Visibility was 0. The world was a screaming vortex of white. The wind roared with a physical, crushing force. "Inside! Now!" Caleb yelled, his head emerging from the tunnel entrance. They scrambled through the narrow opening one after the other, crawling on their hands and knees into the snow cocoon. And instantly the world went silent. The screaming wind, which had been threatening to tear them apart just seconds before, was now just a low, distant hum. The space was cramped, dark, and utterly still, and it was astonishingly, blessedly warm. The combined body heat of 4 people quickly began to raise the temperature in the small chamber, making the air comfortable. They sat huddled together, their shoulders touching. Caleb fumbled for his lighter and lit a small, precious candle. The weak, flickering light illuminated the glittering, crystalline snow walls. This wasn't a palace, it was a womb, a fortress of ice built by their own sweat and desperate cooperation. They had created safety from the very element that threatened to destroy them. Brenda, the quietest of the group, took out her thermos. The tea inside was already lukewarm, but she offered it to Alex without a word. He winced in pain as he shifted to take it, but he nodded his thanks, his eyes meeting hers for a fraction of a second. "We made it," Brenda whispered, her voice filled with awe. They had made it. The blizzard was raging outside, a monster of ice and wind. But tonight, the 4 of them would not freeze. They had faced their first true test as a team, and they had won. But that victory had come at a price, a wounded warrior in their midst. Caleb looked at Alex, his face shadowed in the candlelight, then glanced at the small ventilation hole he had just poked through the ceiling with a stick. The battle for survival in the Taiga had only just begun. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for the next chapter of their journey.